Who you gonna call? If you grew up in the 80s, there's a good chance the answer wasn't just the original Ghostbusters movie, but the animated series The Real Ghostbusters. Proton packs, ghost traps, Slimer, and that legendary theme song brought supernatural comedy into Saturday mornings and after-school TV time. Today, we're diving into 10 wild facts about the Real Ghostbusters cartoon from 1986 that most fans never knew. From legal battles and casting twists to scary episodes that pushed the limits of kids' TV, this show has a lot of secrets hiding in the shadows. Before we fire up the Proton Packs, subscribe to Pure Nostalgia and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into 80s and 90s classics. Fact 1. They had to add "The Real" to the title. The show isn't just called Ghostbusters, it's The Real Ghostbusters, and that odd title came from a legal headache. In the 1970s, there was an unrelated live-action show called The Ghostbusters, and its owners launched their own animated series around the same time as the movie-based cartoon. Both involved people chasing ghosts, but they were completely different franchises. To avoid confusion and lawsuits, the animated series based on the 1984 film couldn't just use the plain Ghostbusters name. So the studio leaned into the problem with attitude and branded the cartoon as The Real Ghostbusters, basically telling kids, these are the real guys from the movie. It sounded strange on paper, but in practice it became part of the show's identity and gave it a kind of rebellious, tongue-in-cheek charm. Fact 2. They pick up right after the movie, but toned down. The Real Ghostbusters was designed as a continuation of the movie's events. The team is still living in the firehouse, still cruising around in the Ecto-1, and still cleaning up New York City's supernatural messes. The cartoon assumes the movie happened, then asks, what if ghostbusting became their full-time job week after week? But because this was kids' TV, the tone had to be softened. The horror elements from the original film were dialed back, and the ghosts became more colorful and visually exaggerated. The world stayed weird and supernatural, but jokes and character banter were pushed to the front. The show kept the essence of Ghostbusters, blue-collar heroes dealing with weird paranormal problems, while making it safe and fun for younger audiences.
Fact 3. The characters were redesigned to avoid likeness rights. Even though the cartoon is based on the movie, the characters don't look exactly like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, or Ernie Hudson. That wasn't an accident or a lack of skill. It was a legal and budget decision. Using the actors' exact faces and mannerisms would have required negotiating separate likeness rights, which would have been expensive and complicated to manage. So the designers came up with exaggerated, iconic versions of each character. Egon got tall blonde hair and big glasses, making him instantly recognizable as the brain of the group. Ray became rounder and more cheerful-looking. Peter got a smoother, more pretty boy face, and Winston was drawn as grounded and solid, the practical one in the middle of the chaos. These designs ended up becoming the default mental image of the Ghostbusters for many kids who saw the cartoon before ever watching the movie. Fact 4. Ernie Hudson auditioned and lost his own role. One of the strangest things about the Real Ghostbusters is what happened with Winston. Ernie Hudson, who played Winston Zeddemore in the original movie, actually auditioned to voice Winston in the cartoon. You'd think he'd be the automatic choice. Same face, same character, same name. But in a twist that still surprises fans, the role went to Arsenio Hall instead, at least in the early seasons. Hudson himself has talked about how weird it felt to walk into an audition, read for the character he helped define on screen, and be told no. It's one of those uniquely Hollywood situations where the original actor ends up replaced in the animated version of the very role he made famous. Fact 5. J. Michael Straczynski made it smart, scary, and emotional. Behind many of the best episodes of The Real Ghostbusters was writer J. Michael Straczynski, who later became famous for creating the sci-fi series Babylon 5. He didn't treat the cartoon as throwaway kids' fluff. He wrote it like real storytelling, with structure, themes, and even emotional weight. Under his influence, episodes tapped into mythology, urban legends, and even cosmic horror. Some stories leaned into genuinely creepy imagery, twisted ghosts, haunted dreams, and apocalyptic visions that stuck in kids' minds for years. At the same time, he never forgot that the Ghostbusters were blue-collar weirdos with a sense of humor, so the show balanced scares with jokes in a way that felt unique for Saturday morning TV.
Fact 6. Executive meddling and kids' panels watered it down. As the show gained popularity, executives started to worry that it might be too scary or too sophisticated for younger viewers. They brought in consultants and kids' focus groups to fix the show. These panels gave feedback on which characters they liked, which designs seemed too weird, and what should be changed to make the show more marketable. The result was a slow but noticeable shift. Egon's design softened, Janine's sharp attitude and edgier look were toned down, and Slimer's role expanded into broader slapstick comedy. Straczynski openly disliked these changes and eventually left the series, feeling that the edge and intelligence he tried to bring in were being sanded off. Many longtime fans consider the early seasons, before heavy executive interference, to be the golden era of the Real Ghostbusters. Fact 7. Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters split the show in two. At one point, the show was rebranded as Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters. Instead of just Ghostbusters episodes, the block now included dedicated Slimer shorts focused purely on comedy, food gags, and mischief. This wasn't just a creative choice, it was a strategic move to lean into Slimer's popularity with younger kids and sell more merchandise. For older fans who loved the spooky adventure side of the show, this shift felt like a downgrade. The Ghostbusters stories got shorter and sometimes simpler, while Slimer's solo segments leaned into loud, cartoony humor. It turned a supernatural comedy with horror elements into something closer to a standard Saturday morning gag show in parts, showing how much network pressure can bend a series away from its original tone.
Fact 8. The toy line and cartoon fed each other. The Real Ghostbusters wasn't just about episodes, it was tied tightly to a massive toy line from Kenner. The figures, vehicles, and playsets were everywhere. Different versions of the team with fright features, weird transforming ghosts, giant monsters, and slime-based accessories. Sometimes toys were inspired by the show, and sometimes the reverse happened. Toy concepts and designs would influence what kinds of ghosts or gadgets appeared in animated episodes. The cartoon gave kids the emotional attachment and storytelling. The toys let them reenact and expand those adventures at home. That synergy helped keep Ghostbusters alive as a brand long after the first movie's theatrical run. Fact 9. It ran longer than many people realize. Because people remember the movie first, they sometimes forget just how long the Real Ghostbusters stayed on the air. Across its various formats, seasons, time slots, and the Slimer rebranding, the series ran for years and produced a large number of episodes. For a whole generation of kids who maybe never saw the original film in theaters, the cartoon was Ghostbusters. They met the characters, learned the theme song, and got familiar with the world through animation first. When they eventually saw the movie, it felt like the darker, live-action version of the show they already loved from TV. Fact 10. It helped define what Ghostbusters means. The Real Ghostbusters didn't just adapt the movie, it expanded and in some ways redefined the franchise. The show cemented Slimer as a friendly mascot instead of just a random hotel ghost. It gave Egon a distinctive look that later media kept referencing. It fleshed out the team's personalities in daily life far beyond what one film could do. Later comics, games, and even other animated projects drew heavily from the cartoon's tone and visual language. For many fans, Ghostbusters isn't just that one movie from 1984, it's a whole universe they visited week after week through this animated series. The Real Ghostbusters proved that a spin-off cartoon could become just as important to a franchise's identity as the original film itself.
The Real Ghostbusters was more than just a spin-off cartoon. It was proof that animation could be smart, strange, funny, and genuinely scary all at once. While most 80s cartoons existed just to sell toys, the Real Ghostbusters tried to do something more. It built a world, told real stories, and gave kids nightmares in the best way possible. The early seasons balanced humor with horror in a way that felt fresh and exciting. Writers like J. Michael Straczynski brought mythology, folklore, and even cosmic dread into Saturday morning TV, treating young audiences with respect instead of talking down to them. The show proved that kids could handle complex stories, creepy imagery, and emotional depth, as long as you wrapped it in jokes and proton packs. Even when network executives softened the edges and pushed Slimer into the spotlight, the core of what made Ghostbusters special remained. Regular people using crazy science to fight the supernatural, week after week. For a whole generation, this cartoon wasn't just nostalgia, it was their introduction to the entire franchise. The firehouse, the Ecto-1, the ghost trap sound effect, and that iconic theme song all came alive through animation before many fans ever saw the movie. Now it's your turn. What's your strongest Real Ghostbusters memory? Was it a specific ghost that scared you as a kid? An episode you watched over and over? A toy you begged your parents for? Or maybe just that theme song that's still stuck in your head decades later? Tell us your stories in the comments below. We want to hear what Ghostbusters meant to you. And if this trip back to 1986 gave you chills in the best way possible, subscribe to Pure Nostalgia, smash that like button, and ring the bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the cartoons, toys, and pop culture that made the 80s and 90s unforgettable. Who you gonna call? Pure Nostalgia for your weekly dose of the memories that matter.